In 1919, a young man walked into Italy's biggest car company and asked for a job. They said no. That man's name would go on to sell for over $2 million a car built by a company he hadn't even founded yet. Today, his logo sits on watches, jackets, phone cases, energy drinks. His name is worth more than most countries' GDP and brand value alone. And it almost never existed, because the company that would eventually beg to be associated with him once looked at him and saw nothing worth hiring. So here's the real question this video is going to answer. How does a man get rejected, buried by grief, and nearly killed by a pandemic, and still end up building the most desirable brand on earth? Not despite all of that, because of it. Stick around, because the way he did it will change how you think about being told no. His name was Enzo Ferrari. This is the story before the horse, before the red paint, before any of it was inevitable. Enzo Anselmo Ferrari was born on February 18, 1898 in Modena, a small city in Italy's Emilia-Romagna region, better known at the time for farmland and vineyards than for machines. His father, Alfredo Ferrari, wasn't a nobleman or an industrialist. He was the son of a grocer who'd built something of his own, a small workshop fabricating metal parts, mostly for the railways, axles, covers, structural fittings for bridges. Loud, physical, unglamorous work. Alfredo employed around 30 men. The workshop sat on the ground floor of the family home. Enzo grew up with the sound of hammers as his lullaby. There were two sons, Alfredo Jr., the elder, and Enzo. Their father hoped both would take over the family business one day. Alfredo Jr. was groomed for exactly that life. Enzo was different. He wasn't particularly interested in school. His education was famously thin, something he'd later admit he regretted for the rest of his life. But he loved the workshop, watching metal bend to human will. Then, in 1908, when Enzo was 10, his father took both boys to Bologna to watch something that would quietly redirect the rest of his life: a car race. He watched two of the era's great drivers, Felice Nazzaro and Vincenzo Lancia, battle it out at speeds that seemed almost unbelievable for the time. Something ignited in him that day. He didn't want to build train parts anymore. He wanted to be a race car driver. He'd later say he also flirted with the idea of becoming an opera singer or a sports journalist. But the roar of those engines had already made the decision for him. And here's the part every Ferrari retrospective loves to romanticize. The 10-year-old boy discovers his destiny at the racetrack, and the rest is history. It makes for a clean story. But the real story is not clean at all. In fact, what happened next nearly ended it before it began. In 1916, when Enzo was just 18, catastrophe hit the Ferrari family twice in the same year. His father, Alfredo, died. So did his older brother, Alfredo Jr. Historical accounts differ slightly on the exact causes, illness compounded by the hardships of wartime Italy, but the result was the same. In a matter of months, Enzo went from being the second son of a stable family business to being essentially alone with his mother, with no clear path forward. The workshop that was meant to be his brother's inheritance had no one left to run it the way his father intended. If you're keeping score, this 18-year-old has now lost his father, his brother, and the family business's future all at once. Then the army came for him too. Enzo was conscripted into the Italian military, though not as a soldier in the traditional sense. He was assigned to a unit that shod mules, reworking the blacksmith trade he'd grown up around, now forging horseshoes for pack animals in the mountains. Sit with that for a second. The son of a metalworker, now literally working metal for the military, the same trade his father built a life on, while the family that trade was supposed to support had just been shattered. And then it got worse. In 1918, as the war wound down, the Spanish flu swept across Europe. Enzo caught it. He nearly died. He was discharged from the army in poor health, grieving, barely educated on paper, with no fortune and no family business waiting for him. By any reasonable measure, this was not the resume of a man about to build one of the most legendary companies in automotive history. This was a young man with almost nothing left. But he had one thing left: the memory of a race in Bologna, and an obsession that had somehow survived everything else that hadn't. The question is, what a man with nothing actually does next. For Ferrari, the answer was almost absurdly ordinary, and it's about to get humiliating before it gets inspiring. After the war, Ferrari did something almost embarrassingly normal for a future legend. He went job hunting. Specifically, he tried to get hired at Fiat, Italy's biggest car manufacturer, in Turin. They turned him down. Let that land. The man who would eventually build a brand people mortgage their houses for couldn't get an entry-level job at Fiat. Rejected by the biggest name in Italian cars, Ferrari didn't leave the industry, he just aimed lower and kept moving. He found work converting surplus military truck chassis into passenger cars for a small Milan-based company. Not glamorous, not racing, but it kept him inside the world of engines and metal, and it kept his eyes open. That opening came through Costruzioni Meccaniche Nazionali, CMN, a small Milanese firm. Ferrari started as a test driver. In that era, a test driver wasn't just someone checking the brakes, it was often the first rung toward becoming an actual race driver, because you had to push the car, understand its limits, and prove you could handle it under pressure. In 1919, Ferrari got his shot. He competed in his first race, the Parma Poggio di Bercetto hill climb, driving a CMN car. He finished mid-pack, not a triumphant debut, but it was a start. Later that year, he entered the legendary Targa Florio in Sicily, one of the oldest and most brutal road races in the world, run on winding mountain roads. He didn't describe him arriving late to certain stages in a rough, chaotic race, but he finished. He'd proven, at least to himself, that he belonged behind the wheel of a competition car. He was 2 rejections and 1 mediocre finish into his career. And somehow, this is still just the setup, because the version of Ferrari the world actually remembers hasn't shown up yet. In 1920, Ferrari moved to Alfa Romeo, and here's where you'd expect the story to become simple. Talented young man joins great racing team, rises through the ranks, wins everything. That is not what happened. That is not what happened. He was a competent driver, not a brilliant one. He never won a major Grand Prix. If greatness on the track was the plan wasn't working. But somewhere in those years, Ferrari noticed something almost nobody else in racing was paying attention to. It wasn't the driver who decided who won. It was everything around the driver. The mechanics, the sponsors, the parts, the money, the timing. One fast man in one good car could win a single race. A well-run operation could win every season. That single realization is the actual hinge point of this entire story. The moment Ferrari stopped trying to be the best driver and started trying to build the best machine, in the widest sense of that word. So in 1929, he stopped racing and built something instead. Scuderia Ferrari. Scuderia means stable, like a stable of horses. On paper, it was small, a team preparing cars for wealthy amateur drivers, using Alfa Romeo chassis running on Alfa's money and Alfa's blessing. He hadn't built a single car of his own yet. What he built was a system, and a symbol to go with it, a black horse on a yellow background, yellow for his home city of Modena, a mark he said was given to him by the mother of a fallen fighter pilot from the war, who'd painted the same horse on his plane. True in every detail or not, that symbol would outlive everyone involved in the story who told it. Within a decade, that small operation had become Alfa Romeo's entire official racing team, with Ferrari running it. He had the system, the symbol, and by the late 1930s, real power inside one of Europe's biggest car companies, which is exactly when Alfa Romeo took it all away. In 1938, with fascist Italy tightening its grip on major industry, Alfa decided to stop outsourcing its racing operation and bring it fully in-house. Ferrari was folded into the new structure, given a title, and stripped of the independence he'd spent a decade building. A man who could not stand being told what to do was suddenly being told what to do, inside the very company he'd helped make dominant. He didn't last a year. In 1939, Ferrari walked out, and the exit terms were brutal. He agreed not to use his own name, his own surname, in connection with racing or building cars for 4 full years. Sit with that. The one thing this man had left after losing his father, his brother, and a decade of work, his name, was the one thing he was now legally forbidden to use. So he built anyway. He founded a new company, Automotive Costruzioni, deliberately scrubbed of anything Ferrari. In 1940, under that borrowed identity, he built the Tipo 815 and raced it at the Mille Miglia. No badge with his name on it, but make no mistake, this was the first car Enzo Ferrari ever built as his own man, answering to no one. Then the Second World War swallowed everything. Ferrari's factory, based in Modena, shifted to producing machine tools for the war effort, not unlike his father's old railway parts workshop, adapted once again to the needs of the moment. In 1943, the operation relocated to a small town just outside Modena to escape Allied bombing. That town was called Maranello. It would become, in time, one of the most famous addresses in the entire automotive world. But in the 1940s, it was just a wartime relocation, a place to keep the machines running while a continent tore itself apart. Ferrari was in his 40s now, banned from his own name, running a factory that made tools instead of cars, in the middle of a war. If you were placing bets in 1943 on who was about to build a global empire, he would not have been on your list. But bans expire, wars end, and a man who'd already rebuilt his life 3 times from nothing wasn't about to stop at a 4th. By 1947, the ban had expired, and Ferrari did something that in hindsight feels almost inevitable. He built a car and put his own name on it. The Ferrari 125S rolled out of the Maranello workshop, small, spare, purpose-built, powered by a compact V12 engine. That engine choice mattered. Ferrari was obsessed with the V12, its sound, its smoothness, its potential for high revs. He'd spend the rest of his life building his brand's identity around that configuration, even when it wasn't always the practical choice. The 125S made its competitive debut in May 1947. It didn't win. A mechanical failure near the finish denied it. But weeks later, at another event, a Ferrari car won for the very first time. The company that would go on to define an entire category of automotive desire had just taken its first victory. He was 49 years old. Here's the part that should reframe everything you think you know about him. Ferrari understood that racing wasn't a hobby for wealthy enthusiasts. It was marketing. Every win on a circuit was proof, in the most visceral way possible, that the road cars built by the same company could be trusted, admired, desired. He built road cars largely to fund the racing team, not the other way around. For most of his life, Ferrari considered himself first and foremost a constructor of racing cars. The elegant road cars that made him rich were, in his own mind, almost a byproduct. It's a strange, backward business model by modern standards, and it's exactly why the brand carries the weight it still does today. Every road car sold traces its DNA, real or symbolic, back to a machine built to win. But here's what nobody puts on the merchandise. Winning that much, for that long, was never going to be free. And if you only know Ferrari from the logo, you don't know what it actually cost him. Enzo Ferrari's rise through the 1950s and beyond was staggering. Scuderia Ferrari became a dominant force in Formula One and endurance racing, winning at Le Mans, claiming world championships, cementing the Prancing Horse as the symbol of automotive excellence. People started calling him Il Commendatore, the commander, but it came at a cost. The glossy retrospectives skip past. Ferrari's driving philosophy was ruthless, pushing drivers hard, a revolving door of talent, a reputation some called visionary and others called cold. Over the decades, a number of drivers racing for Scuderia Ferrari lost their lives in an era when motorsport safety was primitive at best. Ferrari carried a heavy, complicated relationship with that reality for the rest of his life. He also endured devastating personal loss. His son Alfredo, nicknamed Dino, worked alongside him developing engines before dying young from illness in 1956. Ferrari would later name a line of cars the Dino in his son's memory, a rare, tender crack in the armor of a man the world mostly knew as demanding and unsentimental. By the time Enzo Ferrari died in 1988, at age 90, the company bearing his name was no longer just a racing team with a side business in road cars. It was a global symbol of speed, of Italian craftsmanship, of obsessive perfectionism, and of the idea that a road car could be as thrilling as a machine built purely to win. So go back to that question from the very beginning. How does a man get rejected by the biggest company in his industry, lose his father and brother in the same year, nearly die in a pandemic, and still end up building the most desirable brand on earth? Here's the answer, and it's simpler than you'd think. He never let no be the last word. Fiat said no, he found smaller work. Alfa Romeo took his name away, he built a company without it. War took his factory, he moved it and kept going. Illness and grief took almost everything else, and he still showed up in a workshop the next day. Enzo Ferrari didn't succeed because he was fearless or lucky or born for it. He succeeded because every single setback became the next thing he built with. That's the part worth taking with you. Not the horse, not the red paint, not the price tag. The next time something you're building gets rejected or taken away or delayed by something completely out of your control, that's not proof it's over. For Ferrari, that was just Tuesday. The empire came later. The blacksmith's son never stopped building. He just changed what he was building, from railway axles to race cars to a legend that still carries his name and his horse across every corner of the world.